Hello everyone and welcome back to another Skul video. And this was the special video I promised you guys. You know, I said I would do this a lot sooner than I am, but as very few of you may know, I actually did upload the video, but the footage got corrupted. I mean, not the footage, the audio of the footage got corrupted, and the whole video was mute. So I had to delete it, and so basically I had to do this from scratch as I'm doing right now. And that's why this took a lot longer, you know, like real life kinda been budding me lately. But as you can see, we are here with Beelz's final, like last tier list, you know, the latest. And this is a tier list of the current version of the game, and I'm gonna be doing a reaction on this video and seeing what I agree and what I disagree with. Because there's a few things that, even though I may disagree with, since it's his own tier list and he has like different rules, they technically still make sense, right? But let's start with the video.
Example is going to be my first placement, Alchemist. Alchemist getting dropped back into S tier. Now Alchemist I think was actually skipped almost entirely in the notes. I don't even remember if he got anything. What I do know is that whatever was changed isn't significant enough to change his placement. Alchemist is in S tier dominantly due to Flame Flask. It is one of the most powerful buttons in the entire game, period. Like, it's that good, and if you've seen my Flame Flask Alchemist runs, it just becomes ridiculous. I'm not going to sit and linger on the skulls that didn't get many changes for too long. I want to move on to the ones that got the majority of the changes. So Alchemist is in S tier. We already knew that. Let's move on to the next, which is going to...
Okay, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one because he's actually gonna cover, or like he's gonna mention Alchemist a bit later, and I feel like I can argue Alchemist then. But the thing about Beelz is that S you can only say about Fire Flask Alchemist, honestly. Like the other Alchemists just are not like cream of the crop kind of Alchemists, kind of skulls, right? Because, you know, all they have is literally the golem. The abilities themselves are like bottom 10. They're garbage. They're beyond garbage. They are so bad it is ridiculous. So like it's literally just non-Fire Flask Alchemist, Fire Flask Alchemist is literally just Alchemist with golem without a secondary ability. But yeah, we'll go over this one later.
To be, if I can find him, Sword. Now Sword also didn't receive many changes. In fact, Sword mostly just got some small balancing stuff. Sword Blade Slash got a small nerf.
See, like this is a solid placement. Like Sword, he's like average. I would say, since like he's not using like SS and stuff like that, you're actually better off saying Sword is B tier rather than A tier. But you know what? Like he's just like the usual. Well, does nothing impressive, doesn't do much damage, but you know what? He's very like hit and run kind of playstyle. So you know, like I agree with this. I can understand Sword being A tier.
All of his.
So I'm actually gonna skip a bit here.
For Archlich. Now, Archlich is a little bit, you know, in the middle for some people. Some say that he got nerfed pretty badly and that he's dropped down from S tier. Some say that the nerf didn't really do much to him at all. For those who aren't aware, his Death Trap, previously called Seal, is now a baked-in ability that has a internal cooldown, basically. You can't spam Death Trap anymore by getting Infinite Bone or reducing the cooldowns of his abilities. It is similar to, say, Fighter/Champion's Golden Transformation form. It's something that's not in your control as to how fast you get it back. So there are a finite amount of Death Traps that he can throw out at any given time. And to some people, this breaks him and makes him not as good as he used to be. For me, I don't care. It's still Death Trap. It still does dumb damage.
Okay, so he completely skipped over the fact that he got a damage nerf across the board. Everything got a damage nerf for Archlich, and I feel like, I don't know, maybe whether he forgot or to mention or something, but the fact that he says like Death Trap still does dumb amounts of damage, that is just wrong. It doesn't do a dumb amounts of damage anymore. It is fair. It is actually fair and balanced, which means Archlich just is not S tier anymore. Like I'm sorry, there's no way to put like a Flame Flask Alchemist and Archlich in the same tier. You know, like the Death Trap nerf was massive. There's only like, you can only use it once now, and there's nothing you can do about it. But like, you also got the damage nerf, and yes, the fact that you sort of have 3 abilities now does help a bit, but not. It is not the same Alchemist, honestly. The nerfs were really bad, but I think it should be like, he should be more like top of A tier kind of thing.
And his other abilities are also good. In fact, this just lets us appreciate the others even more.
They're not that good, being honest. Like, they're outside of the slow one, the ability that slows things, because it still does decent damage and stuff. The others are like, alright.
He still has one of the only abilities in the game that can outright slow bosses and enemies within it, as well as just has some very powerful attacks. Let's be real, Arclich is not going anywhere. Next up on the list, just getting through quickly, we have Bomber. Now, Bomber didn't really get too much done to him.
Okay, I'll just keep this like...
to enable your dominant skulls to swap out and swap in abilities and features even more.
Skull,
if you have skulls similar to Reaper, one good for a next skull on our...
Actually, wait, what did you say?
Guaranteed more. If you have skulls similar to Reaper, who like to swap in to get that guaranteed...
No, my boy. Okay, so the thing is, Bomber is a bad combo with Reaper, because the thing is, you want Reaper swapping to kill, but if you swap out of Bomber, you're just gonna explode, and the explosion is gonna kill people instead of your swapping, which is very bad, very bad. Like, Bomber is probably the worst second skull you can have with Reaper. It is garbage.
Soul Reap from killing enemies, or if you have ones like Shield who like to get a bubble shield when they swap out and back in, it can be really good for enabling effects and abilities that trigger on swap, which moves straight into the next skull on our list, who loves the swap. We are pulling in Mummy. Now, I'm not sure exactly where I want Mummy to go between A and B, because Mummy did in fact receive some nice changes. However, I'm thinking Mummy might be our first B tier in this new list, which is exactly the same as where Mummy was before. Now, despite getting some new toys to play with, I think Mummy got 3 new guns. Out of those 3 new guns, they're all very good, but I don't think any of them necessarily...
Okay, so this is going to be, like this placement right here, this is going to be the biggest cursed take of the video. Actually, the worst placement in this video, because Mummy is right now in this current version of the game, I will say easily top 10 skulls in the game, easily, and putting him in B tier below things like Mummy and Sword, below things like Bomber and Sword it is just, I don't know, man. I don't know if he just does not understand as well how Mummy works. Maybe just hasn't tried the railgun. I don't know, because I know he doesn't like to consider items, so things like gunpowder and stuff like that, which do make Mummy busted, like beyond busted. But thing is, even without those, just railgun on his own is like S tier worthy in this case, right? Like, railgun on his own does more than Arclich could ever hope to do. It is kind of insane, and I don't really think there's any way to put Mummy in B tier, because you don't even need to care about abilities. Like, he's one of the most consistent, if not the most consistent skull ever, because you don't need abilities. You don't need to care about those. You just have to worry about your guns, and since the guns are, well, more consistent now, there's nothing to worry about. I really don't agree with this one on any level. I'm really not sure about how he could place Mummy here.
Necessarily go far and above what he already had in his kit before. What they did do is make it a lot easier to get the weapons in the first place, because it was a bit of a struggle until you got to Legendary.
Okay, so the thing is, some of the weapons do go far and beyond what he originally was capable of doing. Like, gunpowder aside, railgun is insane. It is his best gun ever. It is a room clear, damage dealing, kills bosses. Like, I don't know, man. It goes through like everything, goes through walls. It is just insane.
And then started to actually see weapons roll in. Now it's easy to get your weapons, but at the same time, they didn't receive too many changes in terms of how they themselves are used. So the rockets are still really good. The flamethrower is still ridiculous. Still probably his best gun in the entire game, provided that you get a couple of the enabling items like gunpowder and his black steel dagger and stuff like that. But the new weapons are good, in particular the homing missiles that actually zip around and
like the homing missiles are not impressive. I'm gonna be real. They deal all the right damage. They have all right tracking. Like they have some utility at that. But like the railgun, where's the railgun? How can you not mention the railgun?
Find targets. That's very good as well. But I don't think it's quite enough to put him up in A tier just yet. It still can be a little bit touch and go as to what weapon you get and how you can use him. But I still think it's fair to put him in B. Next up, another A tier.
Okay, so what weapons you can use with him, but why is that a problem? Why is that an issue? You have every weapon at your disposal at any given time.
That didn't receive many changes at all. In fact, I think he was skipped entirely. Clown. He is still in A tier, still for the same reasons, has an incredibly fast attack.
Okay, so like, this right here, Clown, there's no way you can put Clown in the same tier as Sword, dude. Like, Clown just does everything better, period, even after the damage nerf.
Very well in Madness builds, functions very well in high physical damaging builds, as well as cooldown reduction. Pretty much, you name the build, he can do it. He can even do full magical builds, which I have done before. It's a dumb meme, but sure enough, he can do them. I mean, Clown is actually a jack of all trades, not a joker. He is a jack of all trades, can do basically anything, and does it very well. Next.
Yeah, so how is he at A? I don't get it.
Next up is kind of a sore one for me, and that's Recruit, who I'm actually going to drop down into B tier. Now, Recruit did see...
Recruit is alright. Recruit right now can stay in B tier. I would say he's more like A tier, but yeah, he's a bit on a rough spot right now. The changes just weren't it.
Some pretty significant changes, and
yeah.
But at the same time, slashes.
This is just I agree. I really agree with Recruit being in B tier on this current tier list, because, like, you know, he's just like that.
They now will buff your away. Concentrating abilities are kind of hit or miss. Is summon. Recruit still feels weaker than he was before the update.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure if there was some secret number tweaks going on or
number
what.
Tweaks. The number tweaks are the issue.
Definitely feeling a little bit on the weaker side to me, and he is our first Skul, I believe, that has been demoted. He used to be A tier. I'm leaving him in B now. Now, let's move on to one of the biggest success stories in this entire update. I'm talking Water Skul. Water Skul is getting dropped right in up at S tier.
Yes,
in the previous list, before the update, he was in C tier. One of the worst Skulls in the game. He was in like the top 7 to 5 Skulls for being the worst in the game. And now, he is up here in S tier.
It was like probably like bottom 2 Skulls in the game before. I don't think there's anyone in the game that could be argued to be worse than Aqua Skul. Because like Warrior, you could say like, oh well, Warrior is bad, because I know Beelz used to hate Warrior. But the thing is, like, Warrior could one-shot bosses. What could Aqua do? You know, he was so
as
bad.
One of the best. Quite simply, the changes they made were simple, yet incredibly effective. His physical attack is now magic, so his basic is doing proper magic damage.
And his basic is, like, surprisingly very powerful. His basic attack is very powerful. I don't know why, but it deals chunks.
Which is something that a few other Skulls share with him. At the same time, they changed the way that his little waves work when it's his main gimmick. His waves, as he fights, they come out and they push and pull around, and they were just kind of a nuisance before. They weren't working that well, and the devs acknowledged this, that it wasn't really doing what they wanted. Half the time they were pushing enemies away, and yet Water Skul wants to be up close and punch people. It's just counterproductive to what he wanted to do. Since the update, they've reworked some of his abilities, they've reworked his passive, and they've given him what feels to be a massive scaling boost to a lot of his attacks. He hits so hard now. He hits so incredibly hard, does huge damage. He is now one of the easiest skulls to build, while at the same time doing crazy stupid damage. And I'm actually going to put his brother in arms, Frost Skull.
Nah. There's nothing Frost does over Aqua now, dude. Come on. Frost has damage issues. Frost, like, he has, like, crowd control issues unless he has, like, one specific skill. Like, he's not that good at clearing rooms unless he has one specific skill. It's like, Frost is so, like, mid right now. Like, you could at most place him in, like, A. At most. Like, the most you could say for Frost. You know? He's a solid skull, pun intended. Haha. Frost, like, ice is solid. But, he's not that good, dude. He does nothing to compare with Aqua. Like, Aqua at least does his job, right? I could even argue that because S is the highest, Aqua should not be S, just because, like, you know, there's, if you've seen my tier list, you know who I mean. It's like Wolf, King, Predator in the same tier as Aqua is like, Aqua is good but not that good, right? But thing is fine, you know, I'll give him that. Aqua is still good, but like Frost, I don't know, dude.
Right up here in S tier right along with him, because they are both S tiers for basically the exact same reason. You can just slap a bunch of magic damage on both of them. Don't pay attention to mechanics, you don't need to worry about it. What they like to do happens automatically. You're not worried about building meters and spending them at the right time. No, these two will just do what they want to do.
Okay, but like, think of this, right? When do you ever care about mechanics on something like Mummy? Like, all you have to care about is like ammunition, but like that's like considering taking care of cooldowns as an issue as well. It's like, when is a clown? When do you ever have to pay attention to clown's mechanics? Right? You just press basic attack or press some abilities and things die. It's like, nah, dude. The thing is, like, Frost is very brain dead in how to play, but he's very weak. He has terrible boss damage. His boss damage is like among the weakest in the game. And the crowd control, unless you have the frozen field, just ain't it.
It's almost autopilot. Run forward, push buttons, use cooldowns, and great success comes your way. These two are both still in S tier. Frost Skull didn't receive many changes, by the way. That's why I'm just dropping him next to his buddy right now. Fighting together, both S tiers. It's amazing.
Yeah, okay, so it's like, no, baby, come on. You can't really say Frost is that strong. He doesn't do much. He's brain dead, but he doesn't do much.
Right, next up...
I feel like this is just a bit of a bias talking here, because like he just enjoys Frost and like the way he looks or like the way he plays and how brain dead he is, and just like automatically thinks that okay, he plays well, so he should be good, right? But I don't know. It's there's just no way Frost is S tier.
Up is actually one of the newer additions, because he wasn't in my previous tier list. He wasn't released at the time, and that is Grave Digger.
Okay, Grave Digger. No Grave Digger in S, dude. It's like his damage is not bad, I'll say that much, but he has so many mechanical issues that a Mummy and the Clown just do not have. There's no way to put him there. It's like, oh well, you just like climb up a platform and now you don't have any graves in there, so you can't use your abilities. It's like, what is the point? You know, like, yes, he's decent, but there's the mechanical issues, just he's not S tier.
Yeah, Grave Digger,
and that's on top of having a physical basic attack and having like long cooldowns. So like you can't really kill things without using your abilities. And it's like, nah, dude.
Was a release that came out after my last tier list, but people always ask me, where does Gravedigger and Monkey fit in? Now, Gravedigger did receive a pretty sizable change, that being that he's no longer a physical skull, he is now an all-magical skull, which was a bit of a surprise to a few people, but at the same time, I think they mostly wanted to separate Recruit and Gravy as they are both summon archetypal kind of skulls, and they want one to be physical and one to be magical, because previously we had no magical summoners, which in a game that features a lot of necromancy seems a little bit silly. So this is effectively our necromancer now, Little Gravedigger. And he is S tier. He was S tier before in the previous update, back when he was physical, and he's still S tier post-update in the new magical world that he lives in.
Okay, but
so
why?
They did the same thing that they did with Recruit. They've tried to make it so that you can get your summons more frequently, so there's been some cooldown adjustments and duration adjustments.
Actually, no, what they did with Recruit is the opposite. They made it so that you don't get your summons as frequently. Because that's the issue, like they lowered the amount of summons you get. You don't drop like 3 soldiers right now with 1 use of abilities. You don't get 5 summons from swapping in. It's like
his summons don't last on the screen as long as they used to. They used to stay out for a long time. But in addition to that, his cooldowns got reduced, so it kind of balances out and just means that you can actually use your summons more often. You don't have to sit around feeling like you're not really pressing any buttons for long amounts of time like he used to. But overall, he was always...
Yeah, okay, but the issue with what they did is that they dropped the cooldown too little for the amount of duration they dropped, right? They dropped like 10 seconds of duration for like 2 seconds of cooldown, which is like I'm not sure how that is fair, my guy.
S in my mind, and he's still S in my mind. Next up, we've got one of the fan favorites. We've got Rockstar. Now, I'm gonna dump Rockstar in A tier, which may or may not bother some people. I know for a lot of you, he is effectively still an S tier, and I would agree, but so much of what he does is hindering on his band being summoned. Don't get me wrong, Rockstar has some of the most explosive burst damage in the game. He can nuke down enemies super quickly. Whole rooms gone, bosses gone. But it really does depend on the cooldown of his band. In addition to that, I just don't think he's pulling the consistency of the skulls that are currently listed in S tier.
What consistency does Frost have?
This is something that I want to do, is be a little bit more strict on why a skull is in high tiers. Is it for one button? Is it for one skill or ability? If they don't have that skill or ability, can they still function well? Which is why I'm saying now that Alchemist, even without Flame Flask...
Okay, so, before he goes into Alchemist, right? Why would you ever consider Rockstar without the band? Like, that's an inbuilt ability. He always has the ability no matter what. That is force. That is a passive. And similarly, Amp, which is like the main ability, the band just works to like make Amp even stronger, but Amp is like the big damage dealer. And Amp is also like it's just there all the time. So like, why would you ever consider or compare these to like a skull that doesn't always have its best kill? I just don't understand it. Yes, the cooldown is long, but so is Archlich's cooldown. Except when Archlich is off cooldown, it can't do much. When Rockstar is off cooldown, the boss, the room, whatever you want is dead. It's over. It's gone. There's just nothing Archlich does over Rockstar right now. They play similar, but Rockstar is just way better. He has way better results. He actually feels satisfying when you wait 60 seconds.
Still does stupid damage. It's just not S+ tier degenerate. If you build Alchemist with any of his other flasks, it's still ridiculously good. Rockstar, on the other hand...
Okay, now, Alchemist without any of his other flasks, it's he's just getting carried pretty much, right? Like, he's not the boss damage struggles. It actually struggles because the golem is not a good way of killing bosses. It's a good way of killing rooms, but not bosses. So you have to rely on his golem like ability, not the passive. But that leaves you without a golem for a long time, for like I believe it's like 30 seconds, which is a long time, where you deal like pretty much no damage because your skills and your basic attack deal nothing.
If you don't have his band, He is still a good skull, very good, but I don't think he's S tier quality, which is why I think Rockstar wants to sit pretty comfy in A tier. They did do some adjustments for him. He is now an all magical skull. This is kind of like the big equalization update where a lot of the hybrid skulls got a true identity.
This is not
similar to Sword Skull, he's now all magic. Similar to Gravy, all magic. There's very few true hybrids left anymore. And Rockstar fits.
It's like, oh well, it's like taking a skull and being like, oh well, what if when all his abilities are on cooldown and he has no passive to use, is he good then? It's like, okay, but why would you look at a skull like that? It's like, why would you look at a skull in a very specific situation after you've already like used his best stuff? It's like, oh well, you use the band on to absolutely obliterate Joan, and now how do you deal with the statues on the hero? It's like it's gonna be harder than usual. It's like, well, yes, because you had a free kill on the Joan.
Very snugly and nicely as an all magical addition to A tier. Next up, just to get him out of the way, we've got our little boy Skul, the main man himself, the protagonist.
Okay, no, this is just cap now, because like this is where I start to wonder. It's like, are we counting items or are we not counting items? Because if we are counting items, then why is Mommy this low? If we are not counting items, why is Skul this high? You know, because Skul on his own, without the stuff that like, you know, without relying on the mage's necklace, like the mana bone, or like if you want to go for the physical build without relying on the mana eater, you know, stuff like that, he's not good. He's bad, straight up. Why is he so high?
I'm dropping him in A tier. He was in A tier last time and he's still in A tier. He received a small change in where he can no longer spam throw his head.
See, like I really feel like there's a double standard on how he's judging skulls here, right? Because it doesn't feel like he's being fair to everyone.
More than once before touching the ground. Now, some people call this a nerf. It actually isn't a nerf to his combat whatsoever. What it was a change to make it so that he can no longer wall climb, because people were able to use his throw head, catch head, repeat in order to scale walls and break boundaries, and you were actually able to skip some boss fights and cause some sequence breaks by doing this, and he's doing this for a long time now, and it just doesn't seem right that they would make that change out of the blue unless it was inspired by people doing boundary breaks. But his combat is exactly the same. His combat is exactly the same as it was before. The throwing head once in the air thing doesn't really change anything, except if you are doing cheesy fireball hunter's boots cheese strategies like I've shown off in the past before, which they are the fireball.
They should just show that this footage is from the old version, because he just threw
hunter's
it twice.
Boots cheese strategies like I've shown off in the past before, which they are fun. Fireball once.
He jumped,
hunter's boots cheese strategies like I've shown off in the past before, which they are fun. Hunter's boots cheese strategies like I've shown off in the past before, which they are fun, but they're actually not very efficient. Have some incredible builds, good damage. His swap has got a buff to his swap. The spin's got a buff.
Okay, so the thing, the swap is good, right? Exactly.
I didn't expect that. I'm glad that the spin's got a buff. People sleep on the spin. The spin is good. Don't sleep on this. A tier, he's very, very good.
Okay, so the thing is, the spin is good, but the damage is whack. Because the thing is, you almost always build a little bone for magic, and the spin is physical. So what's the point? It is like, it is a decent swap in, but like, you know, it's garbage because of the damage type it has.
Next up, Shield Skul, who I like to say is one of the best skulls for anyone starting the game to try and get their first wins with. I often say that some of the best ways to learn the game is to build full defense. Just make a wall out of yourself and then learn what the enemies do.
Okay,
get a chance to practice.
This is a good situation.
Skul's very good. Next up,
let's look at this, because he's like putting shield in A as a defensive skull, whereas, as I've said before, shield is a primarily offensive skull, as in like he works best when he's being offensive with a shield rush skill. But let's look at this scenario, like Beelz fighting the hero, and let's see how many of these of the hits he's getting are unique to shield. Like, you know, like could this gameplay be achieved only by shield?
Up Shield Skul, who I like to say is one of the best skulls for anyone starting the game to try and get their first
though he just dashed through it and
wins
do that.
with. I often say that some of the best ways
this is just the invincibility of the
to learn the game is to build full defense. Just make a wall out of yourself and then learn what the enemies do.
Okay, he just got hit because he used the skill.
Chance to practice. For a lot of people, though, that chance doesn't come around because you die before you get a chance to really practice some enemies and boss fights. Shield enables you that practice. Shield lets you make mistakes because it's not super punishing every time you make one. Shield will absorb damage for you. Combine it with some good items that have also defensive properties to them. I'm talking Warrior's Pauldrons.
So like the thing is, the best thing about the most defensive thing about shield is the fact that you get some health shield with him, you know, and those are nice. But the thing is, the issue is, why even play shield at that point and not Paladin? Right? It's like Paladin gets the shield, except he deals way more damage with the shield, you know. It's like you can also play shield without doing a full defensive build. You know, the health shields are still there. They still like help you when you get hit like once or twice. You know, just help your damage not get melted that quickly. So why not play offensive? It's like, what's the point of using the parry and the dashing skill over anything else? I mean, over the shield rush.
I'm talking Dark Priest Robe, Priest Staff, Knight's Determination, Wind Armor. Grab them, stick them on him, and he will effectively carry you to a fairly easy win, or at the very least, he will show you some new areas you've not seen before. Next up, we've actually got one that didn't receive many changes, but his main change is going to be his tier placement, and that's going to be Pike. Now, last time I stuck Pike in A tier because
Okay, so the biggest thing about Pike, though, is that now he works with Gunpowder. Which is, you know, it was a big thing.
Wasn't quite convinced that he could be good without his mad dashing builds that he was so known for. However, since then, I've done at least a dozen plus runs with Pike where I specifically and deliberately avoid all of the dash damage increasing items and effects, going so far as to avoid Kyrian, avoid Thorny Pauldrons. Just don't take any of those items. Can you play him as a dedicated skull with just regular physical items and not have to be so niche with him? Because that was part of the problem before, was that you had to hunt down, like an Oberon style run, very specific items to really bring out the best in him.
Okay, but the thing is, you didn't need to, right? Yes, some of the dash items like help him, but the thing is, you didn't need to. It's not that he didn't work without it. You know, you always want Kyrian regardless of the run. You always want Hope Slasher regardless of the run. The only sort of difference is like the big one is the Thorny Pauldrons. The Thorny Pauldrons is the best, one of the best items you can have with him, because it is basically permanent orc, right? And the thing about that is, it is like a rare item. So why would you like even consider be like, okay, what if like without these items can he still do the job? And it's like, well, why did you not do the same for Little Bone? Why did you not consider him like that? Like, this is what I'm like questioning here.
However, since doing these
Pike being
items and actually build him around full physical, if you get like high amounts of courage on him with some Hope Slasher stuff, he really does hit ridiculously hard. And because of that consistency, and you don't need to make him into a niche type of build, he's S tier. It's as easy as that. He just has too many tools in his kit that just works so well for him. Yeah. Next up, we've got what I like to think of as one of the forgotten skulls. People don't talk about this guy nearly enough. We're talking about Living Armor. Living Armor is coming in at A tier. He did get some minor adjustments to how his meter builds, in that it kind of builds a bit slower, but at the same time faster. It's kind of weird the way that the meter is building now. Some people think of it as a nerf. From my experience playing the new and improved Living Armor with his meter adjustments, not the case.
Okay, but see, it is a nerf, whether you consider it a big one or not. It is a nerf, because now you cannot do 3 abilities, like 3 levels of his abilities at pretty much the same time, right? You can just do the thing you would do before, where you would just swap out use level 2, use level 0, and then due to the fact that you swapped, swap in. Due to the fact that you swapped in with him, you actually build meter, and by the time you use level 2 and level 0, you actually back to level 1. So you could use all 3 in a row, which like helped a lot with this damage. Now you cannot do that. So like it was a big nerf, whether we want to, whether we like it or not, right?
I don't think he's been nerfed at all. He still builds his meter incredibly quickly. It's to do with his swap, by the way. When he swaps in, the meter doesn't build anywhere near as much.
And I'm pretty sure the meter was also nerfed. When you consider how much his punches build meter, I think that was also nerfed.
However, the major changes that he received pale in comparison to the most obvious change. His punches are now magical, much like Water Skull becoming an all magical.
Okay, so the thing is, this is one of the more minor changes, right? Because the thing is, you never really played living armor with punches. Like the whole point of the punch, I feel like it was fine as it was, because the whole point of the punch was you just hit people as a way to feed your skill. Like you didn't need to deal damage with a punch because your skills would be doing the work.
Envoy of wet slippery darkness, the living armor is now full-on flame fist to the face, fire damage. It's magical, blue flame, magic, and it's fantastic. And it means that he scales in damage so much more. It is no longer a chore to run up and punch enemies to build meter. Before, you wanted to build him with Bomber. You needed someone else to take the heat while he swapped in and out to build meter. You didn't want to punch people. It was disgusting. It felt bad. However, now...
Oh no, come on, it wasn't that bad. Like, the punch does no damage, but the meter build was way better than now, so...
Now, I love punching people on my living armor. I want to punch more people. In fact, I'm looking forward to punching people later if I get him in a run. A tier. He hasn't moved. He is still in A. He is still good.
A
Set
tier
the
is
whole
still
room
fine.
on fire. Now, next up is a weird one. We have Gargoyle. Now, previously, Gargoyle, he has a bit of a weird history. He was originally my first D tier pick in the original tier list, and then he got bumped up to C tier in the update because his evolutions genuinely weren't that bad. Now I'm going to bump him up again. He's slowly climbing up from D tier. Trash Goyle tier no longer exists. C tier, yeah, we're going to climb up a little bit higher into B. So the reason for this is that he did get a lot of changes to how his ability...
Okay, so the thing is, like, Gargoyle works now. There's no reason to put him in B. He deals decent damage, he flies, he has so much mobility, he has slowdown, which you really valued on Arclich. He has slowdown on bosses, he has like very good skills, he has AoE, his swapping deals a lot of damage. It's like, why is he here? Like, he actually deals comparable, if not more damage than Aqua.
Still a bit of a hybrid skull. There's still some hybridization that you can do with him if you really want to. However, a lot of people...
Some very minor hybridization.
Myself included, seem to find that going just full magical damage is just the way to go with his claws, his lasers, his wind gusts. There's just a lot that can be done there. However, he still does feel kind of clunky and doesn't feel like he does enough damage as of right now. It can be really hard to try and maintain elevation using his kit against some boss fights, namely the hero.
Okay, but see, you don't need to worry that much about keeping, staying in the air, right? You don't need to struggle that much. Now, if you touch the ground, you touch the ground. It's no big deal. It's not like his gameplay breaks once that happens. He's still good.
And stay airborne so that you can get his passive buff to damage by staying in the air for long amounts of time. It can, yeah, for lack of a better word, it's clunky. It still feels like it needs a little bit of, you know, work, a little bit of baking in the oven, maybe. However, I like the direction that they're going in. I genuinely think that he might be maybe 1 or 2 good updates away from being a perfectly well-rounded skull. For the most part, he does feel good when fighting rooms, like waves of enemies. If you get a big cluster of enemies together and you shoot some lasers and throw some tornado stuff across the screen, it's very satisfying.
Okay, but the thing is, what does Frost do over this guy, for example? He's more brain dead to play, but the thing is, you can also play Gargoyle brain dead and still be better, honestly.
However, I can't ignore the slight drawbacks in that he does he just doesn't perform that well in some other areas of the game, so I'm going to have to leave him in B tier for now. Next up, also joining in B tier, I'm going to be dropping in Stone Monkey. This is the second skull along with Gravy that came out after my last tier list, and I had people all asking me, where is Stone Monkey going to fit on a tier list? And I've said for the longest time, he's probably either a low A or a high B. If I had a B plus or an A minus tier, that's where this guy'd probably go. He used to be kind of broken. He had a bug involved where he could one-shot just about any boss in the entire game, in fact.
Okay, but the thing about Monkey is that his damage is kind of pitiful right now.
And he did actually one-shot every boss in the entire game when built correctly. However, they quickly nerfed that. And since then, he's just never quite recovered from that nerf. He does good damage. He's very solid, you know. He's like the perfect example to me of a
like it's a very specific
B tier skull. He has good movement, he's got a good basic
all
attack, he's got good passive
whack.
mechanics with summoning all the clones, which as you progress through evolution, they start doing more for you. Everything feels okay, however, his skills have a concentration effect built in, where if you want to get the most out of them, you've got to hold the button in, which of course risks you getting hit. It's one of the chief complaints I have about concentration is that it's a very risk-reward style system, and for a skull like Monkey who wants to get in someone's face and fight up close, very fast and speedy, you can tell that speed is just baked into this guy's whole motif. It's his whole existence is to get around the screen fast, summon clones, smack, smack, get the job done. And to slow it all down by having him concentrate to increase the size or damage of his attacks doesn't feel very good half the time. I take more damage doing concentration abilities than if I just tap the button and do a basic version of it or just do basic attacks. So in the meantime, Monkey's gonna sit in B tier. Not bad, also not stellar. Perfect example of a middle-of-the-road B tier skull. Someone who's very similar to Monkey, but is just a little bit better in just about every possible way, is Thief, who is coming up into the A tier. Now, Thief to me really is, I think of him like the improvement upon Monkey. Access to some incredibly powerful magical builds. This is because Thief is a hybrid skull. He's somehow managed to hold on to his hybrid skill.
Yeah, Thief
works incredibly well with all of the dominant builds in the game. You can actually build him with Oberon because of his magical kit. You can build him full magic, full physical, madness, big crits, cooldown reduction, and he also has the luxury with his smoke bomb ability of having one of the only abilities in the game that can give you a decent amount of proper invincibility that doesn't...
Okay, so the thing is, like, after the update, it's not a decent amount anymore. It's a garbage amount. It's way too short. You can't really put it to good use anymore.
Your movement. You're looking at Hibernation in Frost Skull and the Stone Form Gargoyle ability, I forget what it's called, for Gargoyle, that both make you impervious to damage but also restrict your movement. You can't do anything. You're basically a rock in the meantime. Thief doesn't get that. He can drop a smoke bomb down and still fight, and does very well at this. And because of this, having things like infinite bone or lots of cooldown reduction can lead to a lot of people getting their first no-hit achievements on some boss fights, because you drop the smoke bomb down, go in with the coin tosses,
not anymore, though, sadly.
He can do some insane damage and not get hit while doing it. It's a very good kit. Next up, we have Werewolf. Simply put, still S tier. People thought that he got a major nerf with his jumping attack being toned down a bit, because beforehand it used to hit multiple times in the air. It is the speedrun favorite, and I still think he is the speedrun favorite. Some people say that his nerf to his attacks kind of killed him, but that's from a very, very, very high-end speedrunning perspective. It slows him down.
The thing is, like, it slowed him down at the start a bit, but he's still the speedrun favorite. That's how far above anyone else he was. It was like he was nerfed, he was slowed, and he's still the fastest skull in the game.
That's all it does. It does not stop him from doing insane damage. It does not stop him from having Hunt, which is one of the most broken abilities in the game, literally adding a multiple times multiplier of damage on the opponent of how much damage they can take. You can start slapping people so hard once you put Hunt on someone. In addition to the Beast Sleep, which is still one of the fastest moving and best damaging abilities that he has, he still, for some reason, has access to some hybrid stuff, but ignore all of that, right? Ignore all of that. Werewolf is still incredibly fast, incredibly strong. You can build him for madness and physical. You can do whatever you want with him. Being a little bit slower for speedruns does not change his placement in my tier list. I still think he's S. Move on. Now we're gonna move.
I think it's like the only difference was you now want to take speed items with it.
Straight into a few rapid fire ones. We're gonna go with Berserker.
Oh, no. Berserker in A is also cursed. Berserker is he takes a spot above Frost, Aqua, Arclich, Gravedigger, Free. Like, these guys combined don't make half of Berserker.
Who is mostly unchanged. Berserker is still an A tier, still exactly the same that he was before, still has fantastic damage, transformation effect is still one of the coolest things in the game. Same builds, pretty much hasn't been touched. Berserker is still tried and true, one of the best power skulls in the entire game, especially as...
Okay, but this was very, like, missing the entire skull, right? It's like, he's unchanged, so he's A. Like, okay, but why is he A? He does insane damage, has great room clearing, can work well with some of the best items in the game, has support with the speed buff.
Aesthetically, he just so satisfying, dude. But Berserker's gonna sit here in A tier, and accompanying Berserker,
no reason.
This is gonna make people a little bit sad because it's technically a drop. We're gonna put Dark Paladin in A tier. Now, this is mostly due to power creep, right? Dark Paladin works very, very well on his own, plays incredibly well on his own, but is also an incredible support skull. This is dominantly what we see, from me at least, using Dark Paladin for whenever I find him, is as a secondary to any other magic build in the game. Dark Paladin's shield that he can generate does trade over across swaps, so he can actually generate shields that stay on your secondary skull, as well as while that shield is active, it boosts their magical damage done. It just makes him a very, very good secondary. He's a good wingman for all these magical boys. It just
like right here,
as well as while that shield is active, it boosts them.
This is a classic example of how good his basic attack is. He's just mashing basic attack.
Magical damage done.
Everything is just getting staggered and stuff. It's like, I feel like to consider Paladin A tier, you have to miss how he's supposed to be played.
Makes him a very, very good secondary. He's a good wingman for all these magical boys.
Oh, this was before the update too, because that's old Reaper.
However, these days, due to all the other skulls previously mentioned getting such a rise in power, I'm looking at Water, Gravy, even Frost. These are the kind of skulls that can just obliterate rooms and do just obscene amounts of damage in very short amounts of time.
Okay, but Paladin beats both of those guys, though.
Very consistently, and that's the important part here. Very consistently. Now, Dark Paladin is all about consistency, but that damage isn't explosive enough. It doesn't elevate it to the next level. I'm thinking of Dark Paladin similar to how I'm looking at Rockstar and Living Armor, in that they all have their kits that they have that can either do really good burst damage, but lower consistency, or have more consistency and lower burst damage. And
okay, but the thing is, no matter which one you choose, like higher consistency or lower burst, or higher burst and low consistency, it still beats someone like Frost, for example, even on both of low. Like, low consistency and low burst, he's still better than Frost. It's like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
And I think that Dark Paladin kind of fits that nice even groove in A tier. While we're shooting through it, I'm gonna drop Predator back up here in S tier. Predator got virtually no changes whatsoever. Still spins, still slashes, still wins, still probably the best power skull in the game in terms of physical damage.
No, don't hit me with that. He's the best power skull, period. Not even just physical damage, period.
Damage, maybe. We got a new contender coming up soon, but Predator still does insane work. What else can I say? He's always been one of the best, and he will probably always forever be one of the best, unless they just decide to cut his arms off and take away his swords. Next up is the champion himself, swinging into A tier. Champion surprisingly got a few changes.
Fine, yeah. Champion is fine. Is
handling. Champion excel can do explosive
just
boss
so that the
killing
video doesn't
damage.
become way
Does
too
come
long.
from mode transformation, and be able to, if you do with his dirty, do an invincible more so than a true stun in order to rise up to S tier, so he stays in A. I am, however, so pleased to say that someone who is rising up into S tier is none other than the Grim Reaper himself. Last time, I created quite Quite the kerfuffle, much contention, many angry letters. Not really, but I like to imagine that there were. I'm a big boy after all. I have lots of people who write to me. Reaper has made his way into S tier. Now, the changes that were made to Reaper addressed everything that I said in my previous video that held Reaper back. Reaper is a god at slaying rooms of enemies. His Will-O-Wisp ability that he used to have before the update just made it obscene in how he could just walk into a room, kill about 2 or 3 dudes, and then the rest of the room just kills itself, quite literally. Nowadays, though, they've reworked that into a magic increasing effect, they've boosted the amount of damage that he can do as a result, and they've even given him some new tools in his kit, and have ultimately just turned him into one of the most dominant snowballs in the game. We'll get to the other snowball later, but as far as magical damage goes, Reaper just starts building. And there is something important that needs to be mentioned though. A lot of people are going to bring up, well, is this Reaper that you obtained early in the game or Reaper that you obtained later in the game? Now, I'm someone who will normally say if you find a skull in Act 4 and you're willing to swap out to it,
okay, so
take advantage
of fine.
Even
we can move on.
We can just here between him. That is, if I can do it, the Samurai.
Nah.
Samurai has been demoted from S tier down to A tier. It is a heartbreaker. It is an absolute heartbreaker.
Okay, so the thing is, like, I feel like to demote Samurai means you haven't really checked the new Samurai. Because the new Samurai is actually better than the old one. He's way more consistent. He deals that insane damage way easier. Because you don't need to wait for full moon slash. You can just do single slashes and they do a bazillion fucking damage. They do actually over half the damage of the full moon slash, because it works better with items. It works better with Hope Slasher, with the Hero's Holy Sword, with Rear Blast. You know, it works so well with this that it is just better. You know, Samurai right now is just better.
Breaker. Previously, I had him in S tier solely for the Full Moon Slash, because let's be honest, Full Moon Slash being able to one-shot everything on the screen, bosses included, was just too degenerate. It was too easy to set up, it was too powerful to do, it trivialized fights, it was insane. And for him to be an S tier on the merit of one ability, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Which is probably why they decided to nerf Full Moon Slash and reduce its overall damage so that it doesn't scale as high anymore. That's right, we're not going to see 40,000 damaging Full Moon Slashes anymore. At least I don't think so, unless there's some shenanigans I can do.
Yeah, but you're gonna see a bunch of 15k single slashes.
In the meantime, he received that nerf. What they wanted to do was make it so that you don't rely as heavily on one button. Very similar to what happened to Arclich with his Seal/Death.
Yeah.
To this, it actually balances him, which in turn means he becomes an A tier because he's not super gross disgusting and have easy access to broken stuff. I'm actually kind of happy for him being an A tier because him feeling more fair just feels good to me. Joining him in A tier is going to be his partner in crime, the Ninja. Ninja was previously an A tier.
Also, like, very big damage issues. There's no way to put him in
tier, and for all the same reasons, to be honest, he did receive some changes, like being able to transform into an actual shuriken and fly around the screen. However, for a lot of players, it doesn't change how difficult it can be to control him. I would actually say...
No, but like, the issue is not difficulty, because like he's easier to control now. The issue is, what is the point of like turning into a shuriken and doing all of that is if you're going to deal no damage. It's like, it feels like way too flashy for no reason.
Say that Ninja is the hardest skull in the game to physically, manually direct around the screen. Once you get in the air and you start doing all of his air dashes and air attacks and spamming all of his abilities on the ground and in the air, because he's very unique. He has different abilities on the ground and in the air. Very unique skull indeed. Very cool playstyle. However, if you train with him a little bit and practice and get used to it, he is a very, very solid damage dealing skull. Very strong indeed. However, for a lot of people, controlling him puts you off, right? Like, understandable. It's why some people don't like power skulls, because it's a different way to move and different way to... I think he belongs in A tier. Just because I haven't done it yet, let's bring Prisoner, aka the King himself, up into S tier. Do I need to explain why Prisoner is in S tier? Have we not all...
S is fair.
Entire game. I often argued before the update that Prisoner and Werewolf were both arguably tied as best skulls in the game. And Werewolf got a slight adjustment. He got a mini nerf. Prisoner got nothing. Does that mean Prisoner's just the best skull in the entire game overall? 100% the strongest boy? Maybe. I'm actually out on that one. He might be the strongest skull in the entire game.
No,
S tier. 100% S tier. In fact, he should be an S plus tier, because that's just how good he is.
No.
He stays here. That's it. It's time to drop in another boy in the lower tiers, and we're dropping in Hunter. Now, this is going to be disappointing to some of you, and it's going to, like, rattle some bones, haha, pun intended. But Hunter received one dominant change, and that was only fruitless and a waste of an ability, because no one wants him if he has that, but just doesn't hit hard enough. I've built him with maximum chase, I've built him with maximum damage, loads of crit, put Orc on him to give some more damage, and it still doesn't feel enough. It's like you give him all of these items and effects, and it only brings him up to about the same level as your average A tier skull like Clown, for example. Clown just inherently does so much more damage.
Okay, but the thing is, Clown is not an average A tier, right? Like the average A tier right here, like on this tier list would be someone like Sword, or like, you know. But the thing is, Hunter is, if you give him the one item he needs, Gunpowder, he's actually really good. So this is what I wonder, like a Hunter in C is fair, but Hunter in C with Little Bone in A is cap. Because if we're gonna count items, then, you know, Hunter is so much better than Little Bone. Like Hunter with Gunpowder is so much better than Little Bone. It's kind of crazy. It is insane how more powerful Hunter becomes. Like he's way more powerful than Little Bone. So like
he's so much
the double standards just hit again. I'm not sure
more smoothly about that. I like Hunter's idea of being a true range skull that doesn't need to fight up close and has access to a lot of really cool attacks. Hunter at Legendary, by the way, is one of the coolest looking skulls in the entire game. He just is, and has access to some phenomenal looking abilities. Taking a bow and arrow and making it look sexy is difficult to do, and they've done that. However, his damage is what holds him back. It's nothing else. It's his pure damage. It doesn't matter how you build him. He just doesn't feel like he hits hard enough. So in the meantime, he's going to sit in C tier. If they decide to boost his scaling a bit and make him do more damage, he might rise to B or even A tier. We'll see what happens then. But for now, he's my first C tier. Moving along into the next, we have the Warlock. Now, Warlock is dropping into A tier, and I was honestly debating putting him in B.
Honestly, yeah, Warlock in A is fair. I'll just skip through this part.
Receive get sneezed on. We have another skull dropping down from their previous placement. We have Ryder dropping into A tier as well. Ryder used to be in S tier, but for the same reason that other skulls are being reevaluated, Ryder was in S tier purely because of his bike, right? The bike. Now, thankfully, as opposed to skulls like Warlock, you do get access to the bike constantly, very similar to Samurai, very similar to Rockstar with his band. It is a baked-in thing that he can do. He can just get on the bike and run people over, and it does a lot of damage. Is it a little bit tricky to control? Yes, but that just takes practice. Once you get used to quickly spinning him in place that you can sit on top of a boss for long periods of time, it becomes a lot easier to use, and you start to notice how much damage the bike really does do. But unfortunately, I don't like the idea of him being placed in S tier for that one ability alone. The majority of all of those S tiers are up there because they're really good at what they do regardless of one button.
Why not though? Because it's a forced skill. You cannot have a rider without a bike.
The only one that people are going to say is contentious is Alchemist because Flame Flask and all that, but I still maintain that Alchemist, even without Flame Flask, is overtuned. He does disgusting damage.
He's not.
Try it. It's dumb. For Ryder, however,
if you try it, more like try and check the damage, my brother. Like actually, like see how weak the damage is. Actually do the maths.
Bike is sometimes a bit of a crush because if he doesn't have the bike, he kind of falls off and.
When does he not have the bike? You mean like a 10-second gap where you have to actually use other abilities and other bike? It's like, come on, dude. Like, well, when other skulls don't have abilities, they're not as good. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. Like when Arclich is like completely out of abilities, he's whack, sure. When Alchemist doesn't have is out of Flame Flask and you use the Golem skill, he's whack because he doesn't have a Golem. He just has a basic ability, sure. But like, come on, like when does Ryder not have his bike?
Doesn't feel that good, which is why you want to build him around things like infinite bone and cooldown reduction while also building up his physical damage. He can be an explosive tactical nuke on enemies, but I just don't want him to rely exclusively on one button to be that good. He's also the victim of power creep as other skulls are getting better, like Water. He just kind of sits there in the middle, still being good, but is suddenly you're noticing that maybe other skulls are showing off why Ryder's bike is a bit of a hindrance at times.
What do you mean though? The water got good, but Water doesn't do a quarter of the bike's damage.
Next up, we've got one that I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to be super honest with you guys. We have Gambler, right? Now, I'm going to stick Gambler in A for now. However, I will be completely honest with you guys. Out of my Gambler experience so far, I have not been able to get a hold of and test out the Roulette. People tell me the Roulette is why he belongs in S tier guaranteed. However, for the sake of this tier list, I can't put him there because this is based on my own experience with these skulls and my own playstyles and my own experiences with the game in general. However...
Okay, so the thing is, sure, he has not tried the Roulette, so I'll cut in some slack on that. But the thing is, he has tried Blackjack. He has tried the Darts. Those two alone are way better than Frost. And Arclich. And Gravedigger. Like, the swap in will deal like 3k damage on a good roll. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, like I'm saying, dude, I can't put him in S.
But then again, like, since what he's saying is basically he just hasn't had enough time to even play with Gambler, so like I'll cut him some slack on this one.
Just yet. Until I get the Roulette, I can't condone it or do it. However, let's just say hypothetically that I've had the Roulette and I use the Roulette and it's a lot of fun. It does dumb damage. It just blows up the whole room and the boss dies and yada yada. He goes in S tier, right? Just humor me on this. He's basically an S tier skull that I haven't had a chance to see him being an S tier worthy skull firsthand. In the meantime, he's A tier, but let's just pretend he's in limbo. Okay, so he never used to do rooms fast enough. He wasn't killing bosses, much like thankfully. So enough. The Genie. I'm gonna stick Genie in B tier. Genie didn't really receive enough or much of anything to make him better or worse, thankfully, so he's kind of staying in B tier along with where my most recent tier list was. I believe he was in B tier.
Okay, but the thing about
memory now.
The thing about Genie though, like he's not that much better than Hunter, if he's better than Hunter at all. It's like he has so many issues. I don't even think he even belongs in B though.
Genie to me is very forgettable. His physical damage isn't really high. He kind of suffers from low damage itis, similar to Recruit. And his abilities, while having the iframes, are also suffering from low damage itis. He does have an identity as a potential dash builder, with things like wind armor and the hunter's boots, you know, similar to Pike. However, that's a budget dash build. You know the real dash build is Pike. Overall, Genie, he does stuff, but it's really not enough. He really is middle of the road, very similar to Monkey and Recruit. I'm happy with him sitting in B tier for now. Next up...
he did an insane job at covering Genie here. Insane job.
Is the big boy Minotaur, and I'm gonna throw Minotaur in A tier. This is an upgrade, I believe, from the previous tier list.
Minotaur
is solid. Has received a little bit of an adjustment, like the most minor of tweaks. It's very, very minor, but a bit that Berserker feels solid. I've done this on purpose because these four skulls are some of the most dramatic changes in all of Skul, right? In all of the game. First and foremost, I've got another one that's probably going to bother some people, and that is Ant. Ant is climbing up into A tier.
Ant should be S. Definitely. He's definitely like in the same ballpark as Aqua.
Way from D tier all the way up into A tier. And by crawling, I mean exploding out of the earth like a rocket sent to the moon, because this is insane how well Ant plays now. I have been told by many people in the community that Ent is worthy of S tier due to some of the really stupid broken shenanigans you can get away with, especially with things like his giant fist with some orc, with some crit, one-shotting bosses, slap, big damage, much fun all round. The new grass mechanic on the ground, just sublime. What a fantastic thing to do. I'm a big fan of giving skulls even more identity in and of themselves, right? So similar to Ninja has more stuff in the air that he can do. Ent now has the grass on the ground. Gargoyle wants to stay airborne. I love these identities and unique mechanics that these skulls have that make them feel like their own thing. He's not just, oh, he's the tree-themed power boy who hits hard and has one dash. That's it. That's his identity. He's just tree-themed. Now he feels like he actually has stuff that he can do that no one else can do. The stretchy limbs, fantastic, amazing. I will say that Ent might be able to go up into S tier, but like I said regarding Gambler, this is all based on my personal experiences. I've had some really strong Ent runs, but nothing that screamed S tier just yet. It could change in the future, but I mean, let's be honest, Ent being an A tier is a triumph in and of.
Okay, so at least he's acknowledging the fact that there's a lot more potential to Ent, that he's untapped, so he acknowledges the fact that Ent could be S tier. So I'm fine with that, right? Like Ent being in A based on personal experience and acknowledging that there's a lot more potential to him is fine. Like, because in this tier list, Ent is definitely S tier for sure.
Itself. Now we're moving on into probably the greatest turnaround in all of Skul, right? I have never seen a Skul be able to go from D tier all the way to S tier. Literally, Warrior has pulled the greatest switcheroo. You think Rocket to the Moon was impressive? He's trans-dimensional. He just moved into a different timeline and said, in this universe, I'm S tier. That's it.
Okay, so this is way too overplaying, dude. Like, his damage is still, I'll say the damage is still the same, right? It's, like, he got a nerf, he got a damage nerf, but then he got a mechanic that buffs his damage. So I'm gonna say the damage is the same. However, so like, just the fact that he went from like, oh well, you get hit like once or twice, to oh well, now you can just use his abilities as a parry, so you get hit a bit less now. That is not a difference to go from D to A, dude. From D to S, dude. Come on, like that is way too much. That is way too, because nothing else changed. Nothing else. I really don't know why he would why I would say what is S tier right now. I would say he's a solid A tier, sure, but not S tier. Definitely not S tier. Just because like the damage right now is, you have to like wait so much. You have to wait like a perfect opportunity with like 5 hits and like a machine and someone that does the taxes, and your grandmother has to be there, and like a priest to like do the like in the aisle, working down the aisle. You know, there's so many things that need to line up for you to get the like full amount of damage. It's kind of unrealistic, right? You have to wait like an hour for that to happen. And it's like, he's good, he's A, but he's not S. He's not that good.
Decided to change his fate. Warrior was just simply the worst thing to touch before, dude. He was just not good.
Okay, come on, that is garbage, dude. Come on. What do you mean the worst thing to touch? You could actually one-shot boss. You actually trivialize a couple of bosses.
Him and Ent were both just trash, and thankfully the Skul devs have given him one of the greatest tools that he could ever hope for. They barely did anything to his toolkit. It's mostly the same. The small addition of making it so that he's invincible while throwing his fully charged abilities is
see, that was just one.
Enormous, and pretty much everyone.
Okay, now this is like waiting for like a specific moment. It's gonna be
who's had a chance
1, 2, 3. So you got 3 stacks, right?
To experience this, who also understand why he was bad previously, are all in agreement that this is
you could do that
phenomenal. This is amazing.
Waiting all that much before, right?
It feels satisfying. He's able to be defensive while being a power skull. It's one of their major drawbacks, power skulls, is that they're very slow. You've got skulls like Berserker who thrive in the knowledge that I'm going to take damage. I'm just going to throw myself out there. I'm hurting myself. You've got skulls like Shield who protect themselves. And you start to notice...
But the biggest difference is the fact that now he can just change the direction of his attacks. So basically he can just jump, or like he can just turn even though he started. This is what he did here. So see,
myself.
He's charging, like his sword is to the right now.
You've got skulls like Shield who protect.
And now he also does the slam to the right? Which really helps with because before you would just whiff that, right?
And you start to notice a pattern that a lot of the power skulls who do really well are either like Predator, not that power scully, you know, kind of atypical, or they have mechanics and gimmicks that cover up that little drawback. And Warrior's mechanic not only covers it up, but it accelerates it into goddom. Because not only is he immune to damage while throwing his attack, he actually absorbs...
Although, something that I'm gonna give Beelz though for this tier list is that Warrior makes sense in this tier list. Like in the S tier, if you just look at the S tier, Warrior doesn't make sense because Warrior is in the same like Water Skull, like Frost Skull, Grave Digger kind of level. The only issue is like he's not like Werewolf, he's not Reaper, he's not Prisoner, he's not Predator, you know? He's not that kind of S tier.
Hits. He absorbs them and it powers up the strike that he throws. If you time this and throw one of his attacks out while multiple enemies are trying to hit you, or while a boss is doing a
Okay, but there's no point to waiting for multiple enemies to hit you because you don't need that much damage on a single mob. On a single like mob. Like, those guys are garbage. Those guys will die with an uncharged one. You don't need to wait that much. The only difference is the boss. But waiting for a boss to do like that many hits is kind of long.
Multi-hit attack on you, you can essentially come close to one-shotting, if not actually one-shot, if you've got the right build. He does absurd damage while not paying any life in the process, which is a trade that not many skulls can get away with. Even Arclich half the time might take a slap in the face while throwing out Death Trap. Warrior being able to do it for free, no risk involved, get more damage, actually try to hit me, dude, I thrive on this. It's just that good. It is the biggest turnaround I've seen in Skul so far. It is incredibly deserved. He's become one of my favorites. This change alone has made him one of my favorite skulls. Before, I would pretend that he didn't exist and spit on his grave. Now, I'm digging him up so I can play him some more. Come back to me some more, Warrior. I want to do more Warrior runs. It is that good. Go out there and try this. Get used to his new mechanic. It is broken, dude. It is actually broken. S tier. S tier. Now, next up is something that I hate. I actually hate this, dude. I really hate doing this, and it's Yaksha. I need to drop Yaksha in C tier to prevent me from dropping him down into D.
Easily among the worst right now. He is way too bad. He's bottom 3 for sure, but probably like the worst
tier. So I was hype, everyone else was hype. We were all excited about the changes for Yaksha. However, even with the hotfix that kind of addressed some issues with him, it still doesn't feel good. It still feels lacking. He takes so much damage. I was just talking about how Warrior and Shield and all these other power skulls have an identity that can protect them despite the fact that they're power skulls. Water Skull's method is just doing big, dumb, stupid magical damage now, and he also has dive and a few mechanics. He can also fight at range with his waves going out. He's a truck, right? He just does big damage. Gravy, he can summon dudes to fight for him and run away if he needs to. Predator doesn't play like a power skull whatsoever. He may as well be a speed skull masquerading as power. You've got dudes like Shield Skull who have an absorption barrier effect
this song
and
is really
blocking.
Nice, though, I'm not gonna lie.
He literally just stops damage, much like how Warrior can just stop damage. Living armor, big screen AoE magical damage. You don't even have to get that close half the time. Punching is good, but you don't have to. Berserker takes the hits and gets stronger for doing it. It's just a case of, do they have something that helps them trade in the drawbacks? Now, Yaksha is probably the closest thing that I can compare to Minotaur, because they both have this kind of big burly bruiser, just
Yep.
run in and start swinging and hope for the best. Except at the very least, Minotaur does damage. Minotaur can slap a group of enemies and they all blow up and go away. Minotaur can slap a boss and take out big hefty chunks. Minotaur is just easier to build. Yaksha, despite the bloat of having this new transformation effect that you can transform into the Yakshasa and gain access to improved versions of his abilities, he still doesn't hit hard. I've had so many attempts with Yaksha now, 2 of them made into YouTube videos and some that I've done on stream.
Yeah, no,
This is the big loser of the patch, right? The big loser of the game right now.
He covers Yaksha really well.
But he belongs at the bottom. And now on to some more uplifting news. Someone who doesn't belong on the bottom is Ghoul. Ghoul is up here in S tier. Ghoul is an S tier.
Easily, definitely a lot of damage, a lot of survivability, very good room clearing. He's just S tier.
Mad
like,
lad.
At least in this,
the changes to
not
Ghoul
like
are
Rebirth level of S,
I can't believe it. Much like the Warrior, much like the Water Skull, he's just received the best changes to bring him all the way up from the bottom. He was in C tier along with Water, I believe, in one of my previous lists, and he's climbed all the way up into S tier. The simple changes, right? And I was asking for this. You can go back and listen to all my previous Ghoul runs before the update. I was saying, please, let him get meat chunks in boss fights. It's his core mechanic of the meat chunks, and he can't use them in boss fights. So what did they do? We're gonna let you get meat chunks in boss fights, boyos, and you're gonna get that meat. You're gonna get big and thick. Oh, what's that? You're getting hurt? Consume chunks. Fart cloud. Life back. You can't kill him, dude.
Yeah, he also covers Gold really well. So you can just... you can just check out the video yourself if you want.
Gamblers in A tier. This is based on what I believe.
And yeah, so the thing is, this is the final tier list, right? His final tier list. It is wrong, you know. It feels like there's a lot of double standards. There's a lot of like Mummy being in B is still the most cursed thing of the tier list. Mummy should be S and high in S tier, right? But the thing is, the double standards are what bother me more. It's like, you give this guy items, but you don't give them to Hunter, you don't give them to... who was I talking about? I don't remember who was I talking about. Oh yeah, you don't give them to freaking Pike. Like, I don't know, I just don't get it. I really don't get why he works like that. Like, there's Paladin being in A tier, feels like he just doesn't play Paladin for the basic attack, as like honestly anyone should. And a bit of an overplay on Frost, Gravedigger, Warrior, you know, these kind of things. Like, I don't really agree with the tier list, but you know, given how the tier list is made, I can understand a few placings. You know, as I said, Warrior being in S, if you go to consider Water S, Frost S, then yeah, Warrior is S, you know. So things like these really make sense once you look at like the big picture. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Tell me in the comment section below what you think of this tier list. Like, did you agree with Beelz here? Or maybe I'm the wrong one. Maybe I'm the wrong one on a few of these. Tell me in the comment section below. And I will try to do a few more Skul videos in the future, but maybe not too soon in the future, because you know, like university tests, exams, stuff like that. But I will see you guys hopefully soon. Bye bye.